I thought the mill people were back.
Yeah. Gonna need you to work Saturday, Mike.
So we're now streaming live on
Go
Facebook.
ahead, come in, Zach.
Okay, we're ready, Mr. Chairman, when you are. Ann is joining us, but go ahead.
All right. Greetings, everyone.
Diane.
Oh, Michelle.
No, I'm waving to Ann.
Oh. Hi. Welcome to the joint meeting of the Dudley Finance Appropriation
Hi,
Advisory
Ian.
Ann's a busy woman lately.
Board of Selectmen, Cemetery Commissioners, Highway Commissioners. First order of business is to read the call to order. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, General Law, Chapter 38, Section 18, this meeting of the Dudley Board of Selectmen will be conducted in total or in part via remote participation. Specific information and the general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and/or parties with a right and/or requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the town's website or at dudleyma.gov. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to watch the meeting may do so in the following manner: via Facebook Live and/or a posted link at dudleyma.gov. Following the meeting, no in-person attendance of meetings of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. A roll call vote is required for all votes taken under this order. We'll move to number 1. Call to order, Pledge of Allegiance. Please rise and face the nearest flag for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance.
Flag
The United States of America and
To
to the republic,
for which it stands,
one nation, under God,
God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice
justice for all.
Before we start, I would like to ask all members participating tonight to take a moment of silence in memory of the 1,600 Massachusetts residents who have died due to the coronavirus and the over 56,000 U.S. citizens that have died. Please have a moment of silence. Thank you, everyone. Next up on the agenda, number 2, acceptance of minutes. Minutes of the special meeting, March 19th, 2020. What is the board's pleasure?
Mr. Chairman, I move we accept the minutes of the special meeting of March 19, 2020.
Motion made by Mr.
Second.
Rossi. Second, I think, by Mr. Siganovich. All in favor, roll call vote.
John Marcy, aye.
Kerry Siganovich, aye.
Paul Joseph, I.
Jay Johnson, aye.
Stephen Sullivan, aye. Next up, executive session minutes of March 9th, 2020. Mr. Administrator, are we good to accept and release?
Sorry, yes, we are, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Chair will entertain a motion to accept and release the minutes.
So moved.
Motion
Second,
made by Mr. Joseph, second by Mr. Marcy. Roll call vote.
John Marcy, aye.
Paul Joseph, I.
Kerry Siganovich, aye.
Jay Johnson, aye.
Stephen Sullivan, aye, unanimous. C, minutes of special meeting, March 23rd, 2020. What is the board's pleasure?
Mr. Chairman, I move we accept the minutes of March 23rd, 2020.
Motion made.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Johnson. All in favor, roll call vote.
John Marcy, aye.
Mr. Chairman, I have reviewed those minutes and I vote aye.
Kerry Siganovich, aye.
Jay Johnson, aye.
Stephen Sullivan, aye. Minutes of the special meeting of April 9th, 2020. What is the board's pleasure?
Oh, second.
Motion made and seconded. Roll call vote.
John Marcy, aye.
Paul Joseph, aye.
Gary Sigenovich, aye.
Jay Johnson, aye.
Stephen Sullivan, aye, unanimous. Next up on appointments, resignations. I
Mr. Chairman, did you do both April 2nd and April 9th?
think we did, didn't we?
April 9th? No, not April 2nd.
Oh, I apologize. Minutes of special meeting, April 2nd, 2020. What is the
So
pleasure?
moved.
Moved by Mr. Massey,
Second,
seconded by Mr. Joseph. All in favor? Roll call?
Joe Marcy, aye.
Paul Joseph, aye.
Gary Sigenovich, aye.
Michelle, can you check my attendance on that? I don't think I was at.
I will check for you.
Stephen Sullivan, aye. 4-0 vote. Well, Mr. Johnson's attendance is confirmed. Next up,
I'll have to get it
appointments,
to my-
resignation, Pellegrino Doria, reappointment as registrar, term to expire 4/1/2023. Before I call it to a vote, I'd like to ask the administrator, this appointment would no way reflect upon any other appointment or resignation that this person had recently.
One matter has nothing to do with the other, Mr. Chairman.
So it's your opinion and the police chief's opinion that we should proceed?
I'm fine with that, Mr. Chairman.
It's my opinion you should proceed with your vote, Mr. Chairman.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Motion made by Mr. Massey to appoint. Is there a second?
Second,
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor? Roll call vote.
Joe Marcy, aye.
Paul Joseph, aye.
Jay Johnson, aye.
Gary Sigenovich, aye.
Stephen Sullivan, nay. 4, departmental communications and action. Board of Health agent COVID-19 update. Turn the floor over to Mr. Tom Purcell. Greetings, Tom.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman and Selectmen, thank you very much for allowing me to give you an update on the coronavirus and the Board of Health actions. Currently, we have a list of 45 positive cases. We have 10 of which have recovered over the 6-week period, leaving us with still 35 active cases. I believe our update and communication system is working well with the emergency services as well as the Board of Health as far as protecting our EMS and first responder personnel. The information is coming in very quickly with our new intermunicipal agreement, and we have now on board three nurses that keep us abreast of all the information that's available. They're doing all the contact tracing and they're doing a very good job at it. We are on an uptick at this time. It doesn't seem like there's an awful lot of activity going on, but we have a fair number for the size of our community. Generally, the people are pretty good with their social distancing and sanitizing programs in some of the larger utilized facilities. I'd like to thank everybody for their diligence and their vigilance in trying to maintain social distancing. We've worked through a few glitches of social distancing, of trying to limit our parks and some of our recreational areas, but not to prevent people from doing hiking or walking. It seems to be we're still in a surge, and people should be very cognizant of the seriousness of this epidemic. Fortunately, we've had no fatalities. We've had to report at this time. And we stand to do the best that we can to make sure the people of the town of Dudley are safe. Thank you.
Question? Sally, question?
Sorry, I apologize. I was on mute. Go ahead, Paul.
Tom, do you have an idea of how many of the total of 45 reported cases, and I know our net is 35, how many of those 45 are multiple cases within the same household?
It appears as though, Mr. Chairman, it appears as though we have about 6 or 7 households that have multiples. A lot of them are onesies, but there's about 6 or 7 of them with multiples.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Tom?
Yeah, I have a question, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, John.
Thanks. Hey, Tom, how often will we be updating the tracing numbers? So if we had X number that are getting better, how often are we going to update that number?
Well, the nurses are now paying attention to, now that we have a more dedicated staff to our needs.
Mhm.
They're watching the numbers a lot more closely. They're doing the contact tracing. They're monitoring the public or the patients. And actually what I get is I get typically daily reports from the nurses. If there's any recoveries or removals from the hazard list, I'm notified right away. Every time I do get an update, I do pass it on to both the red chief and the blue chief and the town manager and to my board of health. Those reports get pretty much on a daily basis. And if there's any questions that anybody has, they feel free to call me. So.
All right, no, it's good. It's good to know the timing. You know, the recoveries. I had somebody ask me that. You know, the cases go up, but you know, how many people are getting better? So it's good that we're starting to see that data.
And one of the things that we do see is, especially where there's multiple houses, the response time is for removal from the list may not be the standard 12 to 14 days. As it moves through the house, the release period, it keeps getting extended. I still have one that's over a month, and yeah, it's over a month, and because of the numbers of patients involved, the house is still considered a sick house.
Okay, thanks, Tom. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. Any other questions for Tom? Hearing none. Thanks for the report, Tom.
Thank you.
Next up, 4B, Fire Chief, EMD, Emergency Management Report, and Departmental. Chief
Good evening,
Coach.
everybody. Mr. Chairman, so I got a few things on the list here. So the fire department is continuing its protective measures on all calls in conjunction with CDC and DPH guidance. Our ambulance volume continues to be slower than normal. We've picked up a little bit a day here and there where we've had a few calls, but it's still slower than normal. Last week, we received a payment from Health and Human Services for $9,000 and change in lieu of ambulance payments, and that is based on Medicare receipts. So that was brought in last week. I'd like to take a moment to thank my guys from the beginning. They've been really good. They really stepped up to the plate. They're doing a lot of good things. I'd like to thank Chief Wayner and the police department. I think this whole thing has brought the team closer together. We're really working well together, communicating well together. I'd like to thank Tom, the Board of Health, Mr. Ruda, and Deb Thibodeau. I mean, we're going through some budget numbers, and, you know, they're always trying to keep us in the loop and, kind of soften the blow, but we're all working together to do what's best for the town. I'd like to thank Greg Linsky and his staff. He's been really good about keeping the list up to date for the first responders and EMS. Citizens and local companies who have made donations to us. I'd like to thank all of them. We've had quite a few. And it's much needed PPE. And even if it's 1 or 2 masks, it's greatly
Call them and shut it
appreciated.
off.
I don't have it.
There's a number.
So thank you. And if I offend anybody, I apologize. AFG is coming out with an additional grant funding opportunity tomorrow related to COVID-19. I intend on writing a grant for that. Today, I discussed it with some of my members. We're looking to get PAPA units and adapters with cartridges that will attach to our SCBA masks. They're reusable, and they can be used in conjunction with our SCBA masks. So we can use them now and we can use them in the future. There's an adapter and a canister just you can attach to the face mask, so it'll work similar to a mask with more protection. And the PAPA units are something separate. It's a harness and it attaches to your mask. And there's a little unit that hangs from your chest, and it has 2 cartridges on it, and it's battery operated, so it gives you positive pressure. So I'm going to apply for that and see where that goes. The total cost was right around $20,000. So I'll write that and get that in and see if we can get it. I'd just like to reiterate from 2 meetings ago, the proper use of PPE by citizens. I would urge that everybody wears a mask when they go into any kind of store. Continue with the CDC and the DPH guidance. It's for your safety and the safety of others. I'm still seeing improper use of gloves along with my guys. I know it gives people a sense of security, but we got to make sure we're using the gloves appropriately. Like I said, I gave that little demonstration before and explained. I just want to make sure everybody's aware I'm 100% on board with all the PPE as DPH is putting out, and the governor and the president. It's just you got to know that gloves need to be used properly. You still see people driving with them, people going through the whole store with them, and again, it gives them a sense of security, but you just, if you don't use them the right way, they're not going to work, and they can actually have a negative effect. But I'm not saying don't wear them. That's not my point. But so just try to properly use it, and please dispose of them properly. We're still seeing gloves in parking lots, and I think that's just unacceptable. I'm not going to say it any other way. I mean, you're jeopardizing other people's lives. How hard is it to put in a trash bin or something like that? Just please dispose of it properly for everybody's safety. The town continues with sanitation of deep cleaning of buildings. We've had ours done 3 or 4 times, and the ambulances have been done a few times. I know Town Hall is slated to be done tomorrow with the police department. And that's all I have, unless anybody has questions for me, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Chief. Any questions for the chief? Hearing none. Thanks, Chief. Good report. Next up, Police Chief, Law Enforcement Report and other departmental communications. Chief Wayne.
Good evening, everyone. Hope you can hear me okay. I was going to echo a lot of the same things the fire chief said. First of all, I have to say special thanks out to my department, men and women there that are really doing a great job. There's tough challenges with everybody in this whole thing, and we're all going through our own situations, home and work. There's all kinds of stress and other things that are dealing with it, but they're really doing a great job. Very little complaining, going about their business and doing their service. Thanks to the fire department, and again, everybody else, town administrator, everybody else that we have around doing things. Just echoing the fire chief's comments for the sake of time. Really a great job by everybody. We've been working with the town hall over the last few weeks, again, to keep operations going. Somebody in during the day to assist with members of the public as they come in. And we started having one of the people in from the collector's office during the week to do some collections for cash and things like that, utilizing one of the windows off of our dispatch center for that type of secure service. So that's been working out pretty well. Still several calls for service, still things that are going on. We noticed that domestics and disturbances are up by about 45% over last month. We still got 3 days to go in this month, so those things are taking place. One of the big impacts in our operation, again, is the limited operations of the courthouse. They're back to a skeleton crew up there, so they're kind of working at least from the building for the most part of the day. But most of the business is conducted over the phone. So as I sent out to the board last week, we went down to Connecticut, picked up a fugitive down there on a charge. I brought him back up, and from the time we got him in till the time we had him picked up by the sheriff's department was about 2.5 hours. So really, kudos to all the guys, but especially Dave Carpenter, our court officer, who's really been doing great coordinating that stuff. We've had, again, several arrests, different things we've had to conduct, arraignments over the phone, several restraining orders, harassment orders that we've been doing, 2 mental health commitments that we've had to do that way too. And individuals have been picked up by the sheriff's department and brought off to different facilities for treatments. So it's been a little bit of an extra burden on things, but we're getting through and doing the best that we can. We had some power outages last week with some of the storms, so some of the things got handled through that. We've got a new contact with National Grid. It's worked out pretty well there with being able to get some attention to those individuals and get a lot more personalized attention to our needs here in town. We went out to MEMA last week and picked up masks that were being distributed by the state. So that was very helpful. And we're continuing to look at ways of how we're going to do our certain services. One of the things that has not been extended, even though driver's licenses and things have been extended in expiration dates, firearms licenses have not been extended by time. So we're working on the best way to distance ourselves for those renewals. At this point, we're only doing renewals. We're not doing any new applications. We kind of have those suspended for the time being. So we're working on ways to handle those things with as minimal contact as possible to get those things processed on time. We were supposed to have a drug take-back event this last Saturday. However, that was postponed by the DEA, so that's going to be uncertain. And so we'll probably be working on those types of things. Roughly, that's about all that I have for the time being. And so unless anybody has any questions, I'll go from there.
Thanks, Chief. Good report. Any questions for the chief?
Mr. Chairman,
Joseph?
I would like to move that we accept the reports from Tom Purcell, Board of Health agent, from Fire Chief Dean Kochanowski, and the other fellow there, Police Chief Steve Warner.
Motion made by Mr. Joseph, second by Mr. Marcy. Any further questions or concerns? Hearing none, roll call vote.
Paul Joseph, aye.
John Marcy, aye.
Jay Johnson, aye.
Gary Siganovich, aye.
Sullivan, aye.
Mr. Chairman,
Chief?
I forgot one thing real quick, and this is directed towards the police chief, but I wanted everybody to hear it. We're still waiting for those thermometers to come in. They're on long-term back order. We haven't even got ours yet, and there's some other PPE I'm still trying to get, but it's slow coming in.
All right, thanks, Chief. Next up, 4D, Town Clerk, election and town meeting. Looking for a Board of Selectmen vote to set the town meeting date at the recommendation of the Town Clerk and Town Administrator. Good evening, Laurie.
Good evening. At this point, it looks like our election date, which was set for June 15th, will be able to go forward with. There are a few things that, in talking with the town administrator and myself, we were doing. Can you hear me okay? We were thinking of instituting a few changes to make it as safe as possible as we can for people. One of the things that the state has allowed us to do is have early voting by mail for this election, which has never been an option for local elections. So we're going to try to promote that as much as possible and encourage people to vote that way. It will eliminate the face-to-face interaction. They can either email us, call us, or send a request in the mail to get an early voting by mail ballot. The only things that it has to have on it is their name, address, date of birth, and their written signature. So they can either have us send them an application, or if they just request one and have that information, we can put them on the list and just mail a ballot out to them. Other things that I would be looking to do, and I would have to get permission from the Elections Commission for this, is to reduce the hours for the last day to register to vote. That is May 26th. Instead of having it open until 8 p.m., I'd like to have it just until 4:30, our regular office hours on that day. But again, I'll have to get their permission for that. The voting hours for the election, I did some calling around to the other towns, and it seems that most of them are keeping them the full time. Things that people are looking at doing are either reducing the hours of the voting, which not many are doing that. Almost all are looking at reducing the amount of people that are working the election. And I think that would be a wise thing. Last year we had, I think it was roughly 1,200 voters at the June election. I'm assuming it's probably going to be around the same, if not a little bit less for this one. With the early voting by mail, I hope a lot of people take advantage of that. There'll be the absentee ballots for the ones that have a health issue or they're going to be out of the area. They can still vote that way as well. So I'm not thinking that there's going to be as much traffic, but we do have some precautions that we're looking to take, and I will be working with the Board of Health in addition with the town administrator. Some of the things that we were looking at is having face masks available for the people coming in. We're going to practice the social distancing. We'll have 3 lines, 1 for each precinct, with every 6 feet marked out. We're also going to limit the number of people that will come in to vote at one time. We'll only have probably 3 or 4 voting booths set up in each precinct at a time to limit the number of people in and out in that area. What we're going to be doing, instead of having the pens in the voting booths, we're going to issue the pens when we give them a ballot. We're going to collect them at the end in a box, sterilize them, and reuse them. We don't want to use pencils because of our new machines. The lead residue will ruin the machines, and I don't want people bringing in their own pens because certain pens will be likely to ruin the machines as well. So I think if we keep sterilizing our pens, and they'll see us doing that, so they'll know that that is safe to touch. For staffing, and John, please jump in if you'd like to on this. A lot of my election workers are in the high-risk area, so it might be an abundance of caution, but what I would like to do is see if I could use town hall employees to work this election for the safety of my election workers, as they are on the older side of the scale and they're mostly at risk. So what I would like to do is a combination, get permission to cut down on the number of staff and use town hall employees. I would still keep a couple of my key employer election workers if they're willing to work. So I'm thinking I can get it down to 11 instead of the usual 18 people that we have working.
So, Mr. Chairman, my recommendation is the same as the town clerk. Only difference is that I wouldn't limit it to just town hall employees. I would extend that to essential employees that work for the town of Dudley that are still on the job every day.
Yes, that's what I meant, but thank you.
That's fine. I mean, I don't think we need a board vote for that. I think between town clerk and the town administrator, you guys can staff it as appropriate, and I'm sure with the preventive measures you're going to put in place, everything will be fine.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Question for Lori.
Yes.
Lori, you referred to mail-in votes as early voting.
Mm-hmm.
So what would be the date and deadline time that someone would have to have that in your hands, the office's hands, in
Okay.
order for it to be counted in the election?
It would have to be in my hands by the close of polls that day, so 8 p.m. on the day of the election, June 15th.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And Mr. Chairman, I'll work with the town clerk's office to make sure that we're fully advertising the availability of mail-in voting. We'll actually start doing that. We'll start looking at that model tomorrow.
Excellent. We utilize all manners of social media that we have too.
Right, we can even put an ad in the paper. I think that would be a wise thing to do. We're trying to get as many people to take advantage of that opportunity that's available for this election.
Excellent.
Oh, and I think I forgot to mention too, we're also going to be purchasing plastic guards to put in front of the workers, so we'll have just a slot that they'll hand the ballots through. So that will be an extra layer of protection too.
Excellent.
The town meeting was the other thing that was on the agenda tonight. May 18th, it doesn't look like that's going to happen. In talking with the town administrator, we were looking at dates that could be pushed out to. And I'd like to recommend that we move that to June 22nd. That will give me time to get everything finalized from the election and then focus on the town meeting, because that takes a lot longer after the meeting to get done than an election does.
Mr. Chairman, that's why I asked Mr. Starchevsky to make sure he came to the meeting tonight, because there's a distinction between the special town meeting that he's been declaring as postponed for 30 days and the regular town meeting, which has not yet been posted. So we're allowed, in the absence of the town meeting having been posted yet, the Board of Selectmen is actually allowed to move that meeting. And I certainly wanted the moderator's input on that. And we're going to try to work it so that maybe he has to do two postponements, and we can add that special town meeting, in advance of, on the same night, but maybe 15 or 20 minutes in advance of the regular town meeting. The special town meeting, Mr. Chairman, if you recall, is specifically geared toward special legislation for the Mill Overlay District. So I think we can probably kill two birds with one stone, but I did want the moderator's input.
Okay.
Thanks, Mr. Ruda. Through the chair, Mr. Sullivan, I agree if we could look to, with the next postponement, two more postponements, I think, with the one more and then the declaration. We could do that on the 22nd, just prior to the town meeting. I'd be appreciative of doing that.
I don't have a problem with that. Anybody on the board have any issues?
Oh, sounds like a good plan.
So do you need a motion for that, Jonathan, or can moderator take care of that?
So for the special, the moderator will ask him to, we're going to be a day short and $1 late at this point, but a day short for the postponement for the special to marry it on to the regular town meeting. So we're going to ask the moderator to declare an additional postponement so that to the actual day of the town meeting, so that we can put the two together. But for tonight, because we haven't posted the regular town meeting yet, I'm going to ask the Board of Selectmen to take a vote at the moderator's recommendation, the town clerk's recommendation, and move the town meeting to June 22nd at 6:30. And as part of that vote and part of that motion, I'm going to ask that the Board of Selectmen authorize me to sign the paperwork associated with that vote on behalf of the Board of Selectmen to move the town meeting. So I'm asking for the Board of Selectmen to vote to move the town meeting to June 22nd and further authorize me to sign the paperwork associated with with setting that time frame, so we can submit it, and I'll sign it on behalf of the board.
Mr. Chairman, that takes care of the regular town meeting, but what about the what's required legally to move the special town meeting to the same date, only earlier?
So, Mr. Chairman, to answer Mr. Joseph's question, the same process we've been following, where the town moderator will declare a postponement. When he's currently declared a postponement twice for the special, we don't need to do it tonight. But when we get close, he can declare a postponement to a date certain, and that date certain will be June 22nd, on the same night as the regular.
And in fairness and transparency, when would you recommend that Chris do that?
I think when we get close, we're gonna have several more, we're gonna have more meetings between now and the time that his current declaration expires. So my recommendation would be when we get a little closer. I think we just declared another postponement about a week ago, so we have a few weeks to worry about that.
Thank you.
So, Jonathan, you need that in the form of a motion, especially to grant you authority to sign?
I need it in the form of a motion to move to set the town meeting, the town meeting date for June 22nd at 6:30. In the Shepherd Hill Auditorium, and to further authorize the town administrator to sign the paperwork setting that date and time on behalf of the Board of Selectmen.
So moved.
Separate motion, you want them together?
I think we could probably put it together.
Yeah, single motion.
Moved by
So
Mr.
moved.
Mark,
So moved.
Second.
second by Mr. Johnson. Any further questions or discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote.
John Marcy, aye.
Paul Joseph, aye.
Gary Sigenovich, aye.
Jay Johnson, aye. Did I
David
get it
Sullivan,
now?
aye. Thank you, everyone.
Mr.
Thank
Chairman,
you.
can I just ask a question of the town clerk for you?
Good, Chief.
Just on the, I know on the mail-in early voting, I'm assuming that will there still be in-person early voting as well taking place? I would probably believe that the town hall might be open for some type of business by beginning of June.